Cumberland Stories is brought to you by the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. Come to historic Cherokee, North Carolina. Our story lives on. And by the Angler's Edge from Speed Tech, for information you can use.
Perhaps the most recognized symbol of the American West is the buffalo. Chronicled in stories and literature, this huge beast holds a special place in the hearts of Americans, and particularly outdoorsmen. But the buffalo, or more properly, the bison, is also a fitting symbol of conservation in this country. It can be thought of as one of the very first endangered species that was saved from extinction by the actions of common Americans. I'm Angie Thompson, and today on Cumberland Stories, we'll visit the National Bison Range in Montana to spend time with this great shaggy beast that America almost lost, but that Americans also brought back from the brink of extinction. The National Bison Range is located in western Montana, north of the town of Missoula. It's part of the National Wildlife Refuge System and was established in the early 1900s. I had the opportunity to visit the range and convinced the deputy project manager there, Mr. Bill West, to show me the trout water on the range. Fishing is allowed on the Bison Range, and Bill described it as great family fishing. Not trophy fish, but good fun nonetheless. So while forest fires raged just over the hill from where we were, Bill and I managed to coax a few trout from the stream that runs through the range.
We're in the Mission Valley, which is a valley within the Rocky Mountains.
Mm-hmm.
We're in what would be considered northwest Montana, in the old lake bed of Glacier Lake, Missoula. There are about 80 springs out here, probably 40 that we developed into springs that could produce water for tanks, for spreading the bison out so that they don't graze, too close to water all the time. It's a fairly mild climate here.
Yeah.
We don't have the really harsh winters, so they don't have much winter kill, and they can hold their body weight.
Now, we all know the story of the bison and how its populations were nearly decimated. Directly or indirectly, humans trimmed their population to just a few hundred survivors. But the inspiring part of the story is that humans also mounted a massive effort to bring them back. And this effort started with an Indian man named Samuel Walking Coyote. Samuel Walking Coyote's 4 orphaned buffaloes grew into herds eventually bought by 2 Flathead Indians who were also cattle ranchers in Montana. Men named Michael Pablo and Charles Allard, who were also bison conservationists constantly searching for live buffalo, which were pretty rare in those days. These herds grew to 700 animals that were sold to the Canadian government years later when, ironically, the American government wouldn't buy them. But some of this herd had earlier been sold to a conservation-minded family in Montana by the name of Conrad, and the Conrad family eventually sold some of that herd to the American Bison Society, and in about 1909, these buffalo were brought to the Bison Range. So now, descendants of the 4 orphaned buffaloes that Samuel Walking Coyote brought into the area years earlier were scattered all across North America and became the foundation stock of many of the herds that are still around today. The National Bison Refuge holds the distinction of being the very first national wildlife refuge where the government actually purchased land for the express purpose of conservation. But the odd part of the story is that while they purchased land for the bison to live on, they were reluctant to actually purchase bison.
Kind of hard.
So would you call a bison big? Is it a game animal?
Well, it should be. It should be considered wildlife, never livestock.
Right. And so it's probably one of the biggest animals we have in this country, isn't it?
Oh yeah, no doubt. A big bull bison can weigh a ton, easy, and some years even more if there's plenty of grass.
That's a little German brown trout.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Probably sitting out in the rocks out there. Let that little guy go. Oh, he made a noise when he left us. Oh. Later on Cumberland Stories, we'll explore the Bison Range with one of the most knowledgeable people in the world when it comes to wild animals, Mr. Jack Hanna. And when we return, we'll see how the bison numbers add up today. Cumberland Stories is visiting the National Bison Range in Montana today. And you may be curious as to which name is correct, buffalo or bison. Well, true buffalo live in Asia and Africa. the huge mammals that we have in this country are actually called bison. The custom of calling them bison may have come from the French trappers who first explored the West, who called them le boeuf, which is French for oxen or cattle. Whatever you call them, these animals are a true conservation success story. And as the National Wildlife Refuge System celebrates its 100th anniversary, it seems only fitting that bison number over 30,000 in population, and they're growing. On the National Bison Range alone, there are over 450 bison in the herd, and their populations continue to grow at such a steady pace that herd reduction is necessary to keep their numbers in balance with the range that can sustain them. This is accomplished in the fall with the annual Bison Roundup, an event that seems like it may have come right out of the American West of 100 years ago. Dave Wiseman is the manager of the Bison Range.
Oh yeah, the bison were so close to being extinct, it was surprising. You know, the few private herds that were out there were dwindling, some of them being sold, and you know, there were basically no public herds except for the one in Yellowstone. And the Yellowstone herd was in significant trouble too. So at the turn of the century was the time to act to prevent bison. And fortunately, between the National Wildlife Refuges, which are about a half a dozen National Wildlife Refuges that have bison, and then some of the other public herds, state and federal, have basically prevented them from going extinct as wildlife. But the purpose of the federal herds is to maintain them as wild animals. And some of the animals that leave here have gone to state herds in Utah, Kansas, Nebraska, other parts of the country. Animals that have left here have benefited to other National Wildlife Refuges. One in Iowa, we helped put bison on another refuge in Iowa in the last few years. And Native American tribes have tremendous opportunities, on their lands, for wild bison herds.
There are more than 36,000 volunteers in the National Wildlife Refuge System who contribute more than 1.4 million hours of service, and that is valued at over $16.5 million. So you can see where that's really important. This kind of support enables the National Wildlife Refuge System to remain the greatest network of lands dedicated to conservation in the entire world. And the Bison Range has its own volunteers that are ever willing to pitch in, even when the work is dangerous. Rachel Sykes is one of them.
This has kind of been my backyard, and started out with the programs that they had for the younger kids and just volunteering on different things and working through their youth programs. And then I always liked to ride horses, and so they let me ride a couple times, and that's progressed into riding more and more until eventually I've been able to ride with them in the roundup also. It comes from anything from helping to band geese and to riding on the range and at roundup, and the programs that they have for the youth, and boy, just a lot of different things. They've done some research projects here, and I've volunteered and worked with that. Definitely my favorite part is the roundup and the riding, both in the cutting pen but also on the range as well. The roundup and volunteering throughout the years has been is always a high point of my summers and falls, and I know that there are many refuges throughout the lower states and many opportunities for people to get involved wherever they're at and to really learn and provide a service to the country by helping out where they can and how they can.
While the Bison Roundup is primarily done for herd reduction, the biologists at the National Bison Range use this opportunity for research as well. Tom Roth is a biologist here who is conducting research on diseases such as brucellosis, as well as managing vaccinations for animals such as these.
There's two aspects of what we're doing here that are really important. One, from a veterinary perspective, from a herd health perspective, we're doing a herd health surveillance program, as well as doing all the testing and the necessary regulatory stuff for any sort of shipment of animals out of here. With the health surveillance that we're doing, we're able to keep this herd at a condition where we can detect disease at a very early stage. But number two, more important, this refuge is part of a national complex. The Fish and Wildlife Service as an agency is involved with the Greater Yellowstone Interagency Brucellosis Committee. We have a major controversy and debate on brucellosis in the Yellowstone ecosystem, bison and in elk. And this refuge gives us the opportunity to use facilities and animals to conduct research that applies to this national issue. We've done a lot of studies here already on vaccine deliverability, on vaccine safety, and we're starting a new project. We're working these pens here, looking at developing an oral vaccine, again, for brucellosis, which this herd does not have.
The centennial celebration of the National Wildlife Refuge System has created opportunities for many people to get involved. For instance, Kim Murphy. He's an executive vice president of the Walt Disney Company, and he's on the Centennial Commission.
During this 100th anniversary of the wildlife refuges, one thing that will happen is literally millions of Americans are going to become aware of the refuge system, because they really are America's best kept secret. I mean, I really had no idea just how amazingly diverse the refuge system is. But aside from the fact that they're beautiful places and they have a lot of remarkable animals, one of the most significant aspects of the refuge system is that they allow scientists to study these animals, study their ways of life, study what helps sustain them. And not only that, they work with the local ranchers and the local landowners and create partnerships. So what occurs here on the refuge system can be translated to other lands, other areas of the country, so that the animals don't have to have just the refuge in order to survive. They can survive beautifully and remarkably in some of these privately owned areas of the country. So this anniversary is pretty important for a lot of reasons. I think just that more Americans and people that visit America will be able to visit these refuges and know about them is significant, because it gives us all a greater appreciation for the wildlife and our wild lands.
When Cumberland Stories returns, Jack Hanna joins us for an up-close look at a herd on the move. The ground shook just like you read about, and Jack didn't miss the opportunity to experience it.
Hold on, you can hear them like the old days. Oh my gosh. They're probably half a mile off. You hear them?
Stampede!
That's what the Native Americans used to do. That's what the cowboys used to do.
You're killing me.
Here on the ground.
You're killing me.
Here, up by there, go up here, a piece of grass.
Some people may consider conservation the realm of the wealthy, but outdoors people have always been right in the middle of the conservation efforts in this country. Today on Cumberland Stories, we're looking at what might be the emblem for conservation in America, the bison and the National Bison Range in Montana. The original 34 bison that were purchased to be raised here were paid for by ordinary Americans, including school children who saved their pennies in a jar to help raise the money. When you compare America to other countries in the world, you realize that we've done an amazing job of caring for our wild animals and our wild places. The National Wildlife Refuge System has always been at the forefront of that effort, and it's celebrating its 100th anniversary this year. Jack Hanna, now you've seen him a lot on television. He's the host of the popular television series Jack Hanna's Animal Adventures, and he's one of the commissioners for the anniversary. He joined me on the range as a herd of bison were being moved to another section of the range as part of their routine management. It's amazing to think that a group of about 500 animals weighing up to 1 ton each could be herded through a fence about 10 feet wide. Many of the employees on the bison range are also horsemen, and I suspect cowboys at heart.
Well, you know something, Angie? This got me what it's felt like 100 to 200 years ago, these animals around here.
Yeah, only those guys didn't have a Jeep to stand behind.
That's a good point, yeah. But there's bison over here and there's bison over there. I can just picture them all herding here by the thousands, tens of thousands.
Yeah, it's amazing that we can even stand here and look at this many bison in one place. Really, when you think about the story of what's happened with these animals over the past 100 years, it's just it's amazing.
Well, you know, the Native Americans, they took care of the buffalo. You know, when the white man came out west, that's where the problem started. Because the Native Americans only ever took what they had to have for clothing, food, whatever it might be. And so it's just a real, as you said, success story that we've turned it around. We caused the problem, now we've turned it around.
Right, and you know, I do think it's an amazing success story because humans caused the problems, but humans came back and mounted as big an effort to bring them back and did a fantastic job. They said they were down to 100 buffalo.
Or even less. Man was probably the greatest predator.
Right.
But I'm sure you had wolves and cougars and animals like that, you know, when an animal got sick. You know, the old philosophy was that the predators were bad. You look what we did to the wolf back in the 20s and 30s. get rid of all the predators because they were evil, you know.
Yeah.
But now we're seeing that they're trying to bring the wolf back in Yellowstone and other parks as well as refuges.
Right.
All of our refuges are on 100 million acres and responsible for saving a lot of these animals.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And as I was telling you earlier, I think from now on, whenever I see a National Wildlife Refuge, I will know that there's probably something pretty cool right there.
Oh yeah.
That
count on it.
Yeah, that there's a reason why it's there. The land is there, and the animals it is protecting are special to that area.
Right. I mean, you're talking, I don't know how many mammals. I mean, there's 200 and something endangered species of animals and plants in our refuges. Look at the manatee in Florida. If it wasn't for the refuges, they'd be extinct probably.
That's right.
Look at the American bald eagle, which we've brought back so well, like the buffalo.
Yep.
So these refuges are just, and they're going to be becoming more and more important as populations increase.
Absolutely.
People ask me as I go around the world and film my show about what it's like. But I'll tell you, I get just a bigger thrill. I look at bison out here running than I would a herd of elephants. I mean,
Really?
you know, I get a bigger thrill out of American bald eagle or working with the manatee than I do anything in other countries.
Yeah.
This is basically a park that's just much bigger.
Right.
In a zoological park is education. That's the number one purpose of what we do.
Right.
We have to educate the masses of people in inner cities.
Right,
most cities.
right. And that's so important.
And the refuges supply us another educational tool to leave that, even though the refuge is right in some cities, but you can actually leave the cities now and go out and experience what we're experiencing today. So you get another type of education.
Right.
And I think that's the number one tool myself. It's not just a conservation issue, but the education. Because now the young people can say, just like you and I are amazed.
Right, exactly.
We have to take a short break here, but when we come back, we'll meet a local man who has loved the Bison Range for over 50 years and will fish the Jocko River in the Mission Valley in western Montana. This river starts in the Mission Mountains and flows west to the Flathead River, and a quiet morning spent on this local trout stream can set you up for an excellent day.
Cumberland Stories has been made possible by the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. Come to historic Cherokee, North Carolina. Our story lives on. And by Oh Boy Alberto Beef Jerky, the great tasting portable protein snack.
There are over 220 places in this country with the word buffalo in its name. West Virginia has 48 by itself, and there's even one in Florida, which is outside the animal's original range. The bison is entrenched in America's consciousness through myths, folklore, and experience. And at the Bison Range in western Montana, you can take an auto tour that lets you see this great animal in its natural setting. But the Bison Range is also home to many other wild animals, including rainbow and German brown trout, our favorite. The Jocko River flows through the refuge and is a beautiful stream, especially good for what the locals call family fishing. Bob Larson, a local outdoorsman, took me out on the Jocko River for an early morning of fishing and to talk about what the Bison Range means to him. Bob contributes a lot to this community and really to the world with a ranch he runs for troubled children.
This is the Pine Haven Christian Children's Ranch. We're just outside of St. Ignatius, Montana. And this was begun 27 years ago. My wife and I have always had a concern for helping children in need. And they bring children to us to clean up, and then they take them to foster homes. So we said, why can't we take this farther? And the Lord opened it up for us to have this ranch of 1,120 acres. And we take care of kids from all over the country, Alaska to Florida.
Bob understands why Montanans hold the Bison Range near to their hearts and has great insight into why this place is meaningful for all of us.
My hat's off to our own government. I'm a flag waver. I believe in America's the greatest country on the face of the earth, and things like this prove it. With one hand, we hurtle satellites into outer space, and with the other hand, we reach out and take an orphan buffalo calf and nurture it back to health.
Once an animal is gone from the earth, it's gone forever. With our world of concrete and steel steadily moving outward, it's more important than ever to work to preserve wild places for wild animals. The National Bison Range is something for all Americans to be proud of, and as the National Wildlife Refuge System celebrates its centennial anniversary, we can look at the bison as the beginning of an effort that we can all be part of, preserving the dazzling variety of wild animals in this country so that it will continue to be the best place on earth to live.
This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports.